Hey, welcome to The Explainer. This is where we break down the big topics. So today, we're diving into an absolutely epic story, the story of Intel. For a long time, they were the undisputed king of computer chips. So the big question is, how did they lose their throne? And maybe even more importantly, can they actually win it back? That's what we're going to get into. All right, let's start at the beginning. Part 1, the king of Silicon Valley. For decades, if you said computer revolution, one name just immediately came to mind. Intel. They weren't just a company. They were pretty much the engine of the entire digital age. Okay, so let's go back. They were founded way back in 1968 by some real pioneers who came from another legendary company, Fairchild Semiconductor. And look, Intel didn't just join the party, they basically built the house. In '71, they invent the microprocessor, the computer on a chip, which is just mind-blowing. Then they land this absolutely game-changing contract for the very first IBM PC. And by the '90s, I'm sure you remember this, that little Intel Inside jingle? Yeah, that made them a household name. They were the undisputed kings. And the whole company, its entire heartbeat, was driven by this one simple idea from co-founder Gordon Moore. We all know it as Moore's Law. And the idea was that the power of a computer chip would pretty much double every 2 years. Think about that pace. That relentless innovation was the engine for everything in the digital world. And for decades, Intel was the one in the driver's seat. So you might be asking, how in the world did they stay on top for so long? Well, it came down to a really simple but powerful strategy. Retain and reinvest. That's it. They took their profits and they poured them right back into R&D and building better factories. It created this amazing feedback loop, this cycle of innovation that just left everyone else in the dust. Okay, part 2, losing the crown. Because, in the world of tech, nothing lasts forever. And as the whole industry started to shift, the king started to stumble. So what happened? Well, a totally new way of doing business popped up, and it was pretty much perfected by a company in Taiwan called TSMC. They pioneered this thing called the pure play foundry. Now, what does that mean? It means they only build chips for other people. They don't design their own. And this was a game changer because it let all these other companies, we call them fabless, focus only on designing great chips without worrying about the billions it costs to build a factory. All of a sudden, Intel had a whole new wave of intense competition. And this is really where the cracks in the armor started to show. You get to the mid-2010s, and Intel's legendary manufacturing machine, the thing they were famous for, it just stalled. We're talking years of delays on their new chip technologies. And that delay, it was a massive opening for their rivals, especially AMD. AMD went to TSMC, used their more advanced factories, and just leapfrogged Intel's tech. And then there was the big one. Intel actually passed on making the chip for the very first iPhone. A decision that, looking back now, wow, what a massive missed opportunity. But it wasn't just about technology. Something was changing deep inside the company and its core philosophy. That old model, retain and reinvest, it kind of got pushed aside for a new one, dominate and distribute. You see the shift? The focus wasn't so much on plowing every single dollar back into building the future anymore. It became more about protecting their market share, their dominance, and distributing a lot of cash to shareholders. So just how much cash are we talking about? Get ready for this number. A staggering $142 billion. That's what they spent on stock buybacks from 1998 to 2020. And, the critics look at that number and say, wow, that's money that could have funded entire generations of new factories, of new research, the very engine that made Intel the leader to begin with. Which brings us to part 3, a bold new plan. Because by 2021, things were looking tough. Their manufacturing leadership, gone. Their market share, slipping away. Intel knew, they absolutely knew, they needed a radical change. It was about survival. And to lead this charge, they did something pretty interesting. They brought back an old-school Intel guy, a veteran engineer named Pat Gelsinger, to be the new CEO. This is a guy who started at Intel when he was just a teenager. He went on to become their first ever chief technology officer. And the first thing he did? He stood up and declared the era of big stock buybacks was over. It was a huge signal that Intel was going back to its engineering roots. So Gelsinger comes in and unveils this bold new strategy. It's called IDM 2.0, and it's basically a 3-part plan. Okay, step 1, fix your own factories. Get your house in order. Step 2, be smart. Use your rivals, like TSMC, for some of your products when it makes sense. But step 3, this was the really radical part. they decided to launch something called Intel Foundry Services. And the idea was to open up their factories and build chips for anybody, for the rest of the world. Yeah, even for their direct competitors. Now, this whole thing, this entire massive bet, hinges on one incredibly ambitious goal. They want to reclaim their technology leadership by delivering 5 new generations of chip technology in just 4 years. To put that in perspective, that pace is, well, it's pretty much unheard of in this industry. It's an all-out sprint. All right, let's move to part 4, America's national champion. Because right when Intel was starting this massive internal turnaround, the whole story got even bigger. The stakes were raised. All of a sudden, this wasn't just about one company's future, it became a matter of national security. So here's what happened. The US government basically looked around and had this realization. Wait a minute, almost all of the world's most advanced computer chips are made in one place, Taiwan. And they saw that as a huge risk for both the economy and for national security. So Intel pretty much became the designated national champion. Why? Because they're the only American company that has the sheer scale to build these cutting-edge chip factories on US soil. And to help them, the government is backing them with billions of dollars in subsidies from the new CHIPS Act. But let's be clear, this comeback is a monumental challenge. I mean, just look at the gap they need to close. You've got TSMC dominating the market with something like 67% of the global share. Intel's new foundry business, it's starting at less than 3%. And man, is it an expensive gamble. While TSMC is just printing money, Intel's new foundry is expected to lose $7 billion this year just getting off the ground. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. Right now, Intel's fight isn't just a corporate battle for market share anymore. No way. It has become a cornerstone of America's entire national strategy. A strategy to secure the future of technology and to try and rebalance a very, very fragile global supply chain. So the road ahead for Intel is going to be incredibly difficult. It's going to be unbelievably expensive, but they're betting it all. They've got the backing of a nation, and they're trying to get back to that engineering soul that made them great in the first place. This is, without a doubt, the biggest bet in the company's long history. And the stakes, well, for both Intel and for the country, they really couldn't be any higher.